The Galactic Academy's orientation hall buzzed with nervous energy as hundreds of alien species gathered for the first day of the most prestigious military training program in known space. Crystalline beings from Prime stood next to hulking rock creatures from the granite systems, while sleek reptilian saurians hissed softly among themselves. The diversity was staggering, representing over 200 different worlds and civilizations. Maya sat alone in the back corner, her small human frame almost invisible among the towering aliens around her. At barely 5 feet tall with dark hair tied back in a simple ponytail, she looked more like a lost child than a military cadet. Her olive-toned skin bore the telltale signs of someone who had grown up under harsh conditions, small scars on her hands, a slight callus on her right shoulder from carrying heavy loads, and eyes that seemed older than her 22 years. "Look at that tiny thing," whispered a 7-foot-tall saurian with scales that shifted from green to purple when he was amused. His forked tongue flicked out as he gestured toward Maya. "Did they seriously accept a human from a? She looks like she'd break if someone breathed on her too hard." His companion, a crystalline being named whose body chimed softly when he moved, turned his multifaceted head toward Maya. "Humans are from Terra, correct? That backward planet with the extreme gravity and poisonous atmosphere. I heard they barely discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago." The conversation wasn't exactly quiet, and Maya could hear every word. She'd been hearing variations of the same comments for the past 3 days since arriving at the Academy station. Earth was indeed considered by galactic standards a planet where the gravity was 3 times the galactic average, where the atmosphere contained oxygen at levels that would be toxic to most species, and where the native life forms had evolved to be aggressively competitive. Maya pulled her tablet closer and continued reviewing the Academy's combat protocols. She'd memorized them already, but studying kept her hands busy and gave her an excuse not to engage with her fellow cadets. The truth was, she knew exactly what they thought of her. Human space was tiny compared to the great galactic empires. Earth had been discovered by the Galactic Council only recently, and humans were seen as primitive newcomers who had somehow stumbled into space travel. What none of them knew was that Maya hadn't grown up on Earth at all. She'd been born on 442b, a human colony world that made Earth look like a paradise resort. 442b had gravity 4 times Earth normal, radiation storms that could kill an unprotected human in minutes, and predators that hunted in packs and could tear through military-grade armor with their claws. The human colonists called it Hell's Garden, and they'd chosen to settle there specifically because it was too dangerous for any other species to want. Maya's parents had been part of the terraforming team, working to make small sections of the planet habitable for human expansion. They'd died when she was 12, killed in a radiation storm while trying to repair an atmospheric processor. Maya had survived alone for 6 years, living in the abandoned colony structures and hunting the local wildlife for food. When a council rescue ship had finally detected the human energy signatures and come to investigate, they'd found Maya living in the ruins of the colony, surrounded by the bones of creatures she'd killed for survival. The council officials had been so shocked that a lone human teenager had survived on such a hostile world that they'd fast-tracked her application for the Galactic Academy. "Attention, cadets," announced Commander Al, imposing whose voice boomed across the orientation hall. They were one of the council's most respected warrior species, standing 8 feet tall with natural armor plating and 4 arms that could each bench press a small vehicle. "You are here because your respective governments believe you have the potential to serve in the Galactic Defense Force. Over the next 6 months, we will determine whether they were correct." The commander's eyes swept across the assembled cadets, lingering for a moment on Maya before continuing. "The training will be divided into 4 phases: academic study of galactic military history and tactics, physical conditioning and combat training, simulation exercises against historical scenarios, and finally, live-fire exercises against automated defense systems." A murmur ran through the crowd. Live-fire exercises were notoriously dangerous, with a casualty rate of nearly 10%. Many cadets would wash out before reaching that phase. "You will be divided into training squads of 8 members each," Al continued. "These squads will remain together throughout your training. Your success or failure will be measured both individually and as a team." Maya felt her stomach sink. Group training meant she'd have to work closely with aliens who already saw her as a weak link. She'd hoped to be able to prove herself through individual performance, but the Academy clearly prioritized teamwork. Squad assignments are now being transmitted to your personal devices, the commander announced. Report to your designated training areas in 1 hour. Maya checked her tablet and saw that she'd been assigned to Squad Gamma 7. The names of her 7 squad mates were listed, along with their species designations. 2 Saurians, including who'd been mocking her earlier, 2 with their crystal-based physiology, 1 warrior, 1 pilot known for their exceptional reflexes, and 1 engineer whose species was famous for their analytical minds. She was the only human. Maya gathered her gear and made her way to Training Bay 7, a massive chamber with variable gravity controls, obstacle courses, and combat simulation equipment. Her squad mates were already there, clustered together and talking in low voices. They stopped when she approached. "So you're our human," said a female named whose armor plating was decorated with ritual scars that indicated she'd already seen combat. "I'm squad leader until proven otherwise. What's your specialty, little one?" Maya kept her voice level. "Survival in close quarters combat." Laughed a hissing sound that made his scales ripple. "Close quarters combat? You're barely half my size. What are you going to do, bite my ankles?" The two chimed in harmony, their crystalline bodies catching the light. "Humans have no natural armor or weapons," said one of them. "Their reflexes are slower than most species. Their strength is minimal by galactic standards. I calculate a 97% probability that she will be eliminated in the first phase." Maya said nothing. She'd learned long ago that words meant nothing until you could back them up with action. The pilot Ra studied Maya with large, compound eyes. "I've heard humans have unusual psychological resilience," she said thoughtfully. "Something about evolving on a predator world, but physical training will be challenging." "Challenging is an understatement," muttered the engineer N, whose elongated skull housed a brain 3 times the size of a human's. "The Academy's physical standards are calibrated for species with proper evolutionary advantages." Raised one of her 4 hands for silence. "Enough speculation. We start with basic fitness assessment, everyone to the obstacle course." The obstacle course was a 3-dimensional maze of barriers, climbing walls, balance beams, and moving platforms suspended over a foam pit. It was designed to test agility, strength, coordination, and problem-solving under pressure. Squad members would run it individually while being timed, then as a team. Went first, his powerful legs carrying him up the climbing wall in smooth motions. His natural claws gave him excellent grip, and his reptilian balance let him navigate the narrow beams without hesitation. He completed the course in just under 4 minutes. The went next, their crystalline bodies chiming as they moved. They could partially alter their molecular structure to improve grip and leverage, essentially cheating the physics of the obstacles. Both finished in under 3.5 minutes. Was a powerhouse, simply smashing through obstacles that were meant to be navigated around. Her natural armor protected her from the foam pit's impact absorption fields, and her 4 arms let her tackle multiple challenge points simultaneously. 3 minutes, 10 seconds. Ra flew more than ran, using her species' natural hovering ability to bypass many of the ground-based obstacles entirely. The course supervisors allowed it since flight was a natural ability rather than technological assistance. 2 minutes, 45 seconds. N took a methodical approach, analyzing each obstacle and calculating optimal paths before moving. His large brain let him see solutions that the others had missed, finding shortcuts and efficient routes. 3 minutes flat. Then it was Maya's turn. She stood at the starting line, ignoring the whispered comments from her squad mates about how this would be embarrassing to watch. The course supervisor, a bored-looking with a timer in his claws, gestured for her to begin. Maya had been studying the course while her squad mates ran it, noting their techniques and the obstacles that had slowed each of them down. She'd also noticed something they'd all missed. The course was designed with multiple solution paths, and the fastest routes weren't necessarily the most obvious ones. She exploded forward from the starting line with a speed that surprised everyone watching. Growing up on 442B had given her leg muscles like coiled steel springs, and the Academy's standard gravity felt almost weightlessly light compared to what she was used to. The first obstacle was a series of balance beams at different heights. While her squad mates had carefully walked across them, Maya ran across them full speed, her arms extended for balance and her body low to minimize wind resistance. Her years of navigating unstable surfaces while hunting predators had given her an almost supernatural sense of balance. She hit the climbing wall at a dead sprint and went up it like a spider, her small size letting her use handholds that larger beings couldn't reach. At the top, instead of taking the designated path around to the next section, she leaped across a gap that the course designers had probably intended as a dead end, landing on a platform that put her 3 obstacles ahead of the normal route. The foam pit section was a series of swinging platforms over a 20-foot drop. Maya didn't bother with the platforms. She grabbed one of the support cables and slid down it hand over hand, dropping the last 8 feet to land in a roll that absorbed the impact. The final section was a maze of moving walls that shifted position every 30 seconds. Most cadets waited for the pattern, then navigated carefully through the gaps. Maya had timed the sequence while watching the others. She sprinted into the maze during a window when all the walls were moving toward the center, threading through gaps that existed for only seconds at a time. She crossed the finish line and rolled to her feet, breathing hard but not exhausted. The timer read 1 minute, 57 seconds. The training bay fell completely silent. The course supervisor stared at his timer, then reset it and stared at it again. That has to be a malfunction, he muttered. But Maya had been recorded by the Academy's monitoring systems. There was no mistake. Was the first to speak, her voice carrying a note of grudging respect. How did you move that fast, and how did you see those alternate routes? Maya wiped sweat from her forehead. I grew up somewhere where being slow meant being dead. Scales had shifted to a pale yellow, indicating shock or confusion. But you're just human. Humans are supposed to be weak. Compared to what? Maya asked. She wasn't being confrontational, just genuinely curious. What exactly do you know about human space? The question hung in the air. The truth was, none of them knew much about humans at all. Earth was mentioned in their species databases as a recent addition to the Council, with a note about dangerous environmental conditions and primitive technology. But they'd assumed that meant humans were weak, because they'd never considered that surviving in dangerous conditions might make a species stronger, not weaker. Team Run is next, announced the course supervisor, still looking confused by Maya's time. All 8 squad members must complete the course together. Time stops when the last member crosses the finish line. This was where Maya expected to struggle. She was fast individually, but coordinating with 7 aliens who were all larger and stronger than her would be a challenge. The team run required communication, planning, and mutual assistance through obstacles that were too difficult for any single squad member to handle alone. Took charge, which was expected. We need a strategy. Some obstacles require brute strength, others require speed or agility. We should assign roles based on individual capabilities. The human should stay in the back and try not to slow us down too much, suggested. Maya bit back her first response. Instead, she said, I've run the course once. I might be able to help with routing. Routing? Asked, his crystalline body refracting light in patterns that indicated curiosity. I found some shortcuts, paths that weren't obvious during individual runs but might work for a team. N's large brain was already working on the problem. Interesting, show us what you observed. Maya pulled up a holographic display of the course layout on her tablet and began marking the alternate routes she'd discovered. She explained how the timing windows worked, which obstacles could be bypassed entirely with proper coordination, and how some sections could be completed faster if team members worked in specific sequences rather than all together. Her analysis was thorough and clearly explained. More importantly, it was based on actual observation and testing rather than theoretical calculation. This could work, admitted Ra, studying the proposed routes, but it would require precise timing and trust between team members. Do we trust the human's analysis? Asked bluntly. The question wasn't really about trust. It was about whether they were willing to follow strategy suggestions from someone they'd dismissed as weak and inexperienced. Her individual time was exceptional, said N slowly. The mathematical probability of achieving such a result through luck alone is negligible. This suggests genuine capability. That was probably the closest thing to a compliment Maya would get from the analytical. Let's try it, decided. But if this fails because of bad information, human, you'll answer for it. Maya nodded. She'd been answering for her decisions her entire life. The team run began with all 8 squad members lined up at the starting position. The first obstacle was a wall too high for any individual to climb, requiring team lifting and coordination. Traditional strategy would have the strongest members boost the lighter ones up, then find a way to get the heavy members up last. Maya's suggested approach was different. Instead of the obvious climbing route, she led them to a structural weak point where the wall connected to an adjacent obstacle. With precise application of force from the and coordinated weight distribution from the crystal beings, they could actually destabilize a section of the wall enough to create a temporary ramp. It worked perfectly, saving them nearly a minute. The balance beam section required all team members to cross while connected by safety lines. Maya had noticed that the beams were designed to support weight from above, but were more flexible when approached from angles. She had the team cross in a specific sequence, with each member's weight actually helping to stabilize the beam for the next person. Halfway through the course, Even had stopped making sarcastic comments. Maya's strategies were not only working, but working better than the standard approaches they'd all been trained to use. The foam pit crossing was the real test. The traditional method required strong team members to create human chains for the weaker members to traverse. Maya's analysis had revealed that the swinging platforms followed a mathematical sequence that could be predicted and used to create a timing-based crossing where all 8 members could move simultaneously through different parts of the obstacle. "You're sure about this?" asked as they prepared for the crossing. Maya checked her tablet's timer display. "The window opens in 15 seconds. Everyone needs to move exactly when I call it, no hesitation." The squad lined up according to her instructions. Maya would go first to verify the timing, followed by the others in a specific sequence designed to maximize the use of available platforms. "Mark," Maya called, and launched herself onto the first swinging platform. The sequence unfolded like a precisely choreographed dance. Each squad member entered the obstacle at exactly the right moment to catch platforms as they swung into position. They used their ability to alter molecular density to perfect their timing. The pilot's natural flight reflexes let her make micro-adjustments in midair. Even's powerful legs proved useful for making longer jumps between platforms. They completed the foam pit crossing in 38 seconds, nearly a minute faster than the Academy record for an 8-member team. The final maze section required split-second coordination as the walls shifted. Maya called out the timing while N calculated optimal paths in real time, and the other strong members cleared obstacles for the faster members to sprint through. Ra provided aerial reconnaissance to spot developing gaps in the wall pattern. They crossed the finish line together, breathing hard but moving as a coordinated unit. The final time was 12 minutes, 4 seconds. The previous Academy record for an 8-member squad had been 16 minutes, 31 seconds. The course supervisor stared at his timer for a long moment, then started checking the Academy's database records to make sure he was reading the numbers correctly. Squad Gamma 7 stood together, no longer looking like 7 aliens and 1 out-of-place human. They looked like a team that had just accomplished something extraordinary. "Well," said finally, "that was unexpected." Maya couldn't help smiling. "We're just getting started." But as they collected their gear and prepared to leave the training bay, Maya noticed something troubling. Other squads had been watching their run, and many of the alien cadets were staring at her with expressions she couldn't quite read. Some looked impressed, but others looked angry or resentful. She'd wanted to prove that humans belonged at the Academy, but she was beginning to realize that proving herself might create different problems. In an institution where reputation and 3 weeks into Academy training, Maya had learned to keep her head down and her mouth shut during group exercises. Word of Squad Gamma 7's record-breaking performance had spread quickly through the cadet barracks, and not everyone was happy about it. The Academy's social structure was more complex than Maya had initially realized. Cadets weren't just competing for graduation rankings. They were representing their entire species' reputation within the Galactic Council. When a previously unknown species like humanity suddenly produced exceptional results, it challenged established hierarchies that some aliens had spent centuries building. Maya discovered this the hard way during a combat simulation exercise in Week 4. The exercise was designed to test individual fighting skills using non-lethal energy weapons that delivered painful but harmless electrical shocks. Cadets were paired randomly against opponents from different squads, with matches continuing until one participant was stunned unconscious or surrendered. Maya's first opponent was a named from Squad Beta 3, a crystalline being whose species was known for precise, analytical fighting styles. Could alter their molecular density to become harder or more flexible as needed, making them formidable defensive fighters. The match began in a circular arena surrounded by energy barriers, with the rest of the cadets watching from elevated observation platforms. Maya carried a standard Academy energy rifle, the same weapon used by all participants. Her opponent held an identical rifle and had positioned himself to take advantage of his species' natural defensive capabilities. Opened with methodical precision, firing carefully aimed shots while maintaining perfect defensive positioning. His crystalline body had shifted to maximum density, making him effectively bulletproof against the training weapons. The strategy was sound: wear down the opponent with superior marksmanship while remaining protected from return fire. Maya's response was not what anyone expected. Instead of engaging in the standard ranged combat, she dropped her rifle and sprinted directly toward her opponent. The energy barriers around the arena were designed to contain weapons fire, but they didn't prevent physical movement within the fighting space. His analytical mind struggled to process this tactical choice. Closing to hand-to-hand range eliminated his defensive advantage, but it also put Maya within reach of his superior physical strength and natural armor. He shifted his body composition to prepare for grappling combat. Maya hit him like a guided missile. Her opening move was a technique she'd learned while hunting pack predators on 442B, a low slide that took her underneath his guard, followed by an upward strike to his center of mass that lifted him off his feet despite his increased density. Before he could recover, she had twisted behind him and applied a chokehold that compressed the neural pathways in his crystalline neck structure. They tried to alter his molecular composition to escape the hold, but Maya adjusted her grip and pressure points faster than he could adapt. Within seconds, he was unconscious. The arena fell silent. "Winner, Cadet," announced the supervising instructor, a Saurian combat veteran named or who had seen thousands of training matches. But even he looked surprised by the speed of Maya's victory. Maya helped her unconscious opponent to his feet as the medical team checked him for injuries. Was physically unharmed but clearly shaken by the experience. "How did you move so fast?" he asked, his crystalline voice carrying harmonics of confusion. "And how did you know exactly where to apply pressure to disrupt my neural network?" Maya considered her answer carefully. The truth was that she'd fought similar creatures on 442B not, but other mineral-based life forms with comparable physiology. She'd learned their weaknesses through trial and error during her years of survival hunting. "I observed your body mechanics during previous training exercises," she said finally. It wasn't a lie exactly, just an incomplete explanation. But her answer was overheard by other cadets, and Maya realized she'd made another political mistake. Admitting that she'd been studying other species, combat weaknesses could be seen as predatory behavior rather than tactical preparation. Her second match was against K, a massive from Squad Alpha 1. Were the Academy's heavyweight champions, with natural armor plating, forearms, and strength that could bend steel. K had never lost a training match and clearly expected this to be a routine victory against the small human. He opened with overwhelming force, using his forearms to lay down suppressing fire while advancing steadily across the arena. His natural armor could absorb multiple hits from the training weapons, so his strategy was simple: get close enough to use his strength advantage and end the fight quickly. Maya's response was to disappear. Not literally, but she moved with such speed and unpredictability that Kay lost track of her position almost immediately. She used the arena's terrain features, barriers, elevated platforms, and energy conduits to break line of sight and create confusion about her location. When she reappeared, it was behind and she was no longer carrying her rifle. Instead, she'd somehow acquired his backup weapon, a close combat energy blade that each cadet carried for emergencies. Kay spun around, bringing his forearms to bear, but Maya was already moving again. She slid between his legs, rolled to her feet behind him, and applied the energy blade to a vulnerable joint in his armor plating where the electrical charge could reach his nervous system. The massive went down like a fallen tree. This time, the silence in the observation area was absolute. "Winner, Cadet," announced, but his voice carried a note of concern that hadn't been there before. Maya had just defeated two opponents using techniques that weren't taught at the academy. More troubling, she'd done it by exploiting specific physiological weaknesses that suggested detailed knowledge of alien anatomy. As she helped Kay to his feet, Maya became aware that the other cadets were no longer looking at her with mere curiosity or mild resentment. Many of them looked genuinely worried. "How did you know about the nerve cluster in my back armor?" asked Kay quietly. "That's classified military intelligence about physiology." Maya's stomach dropped. She'd assumed the weakness was obvious, but apparently it was secret information that wasn't supposed to be publicly known. On 442B, she'd hunted creatures with similar natural armor, and she'd learned that all heavily armored species had weak points where their protective plating connected to their internal nervous systems. "I made an educated guess based on principles," she said. It was another incomplete answer, and it wasn't enough to satisfy the growing suspicions around her. Her third and final match was against a pilot whose species was famous for their speed and aerial agility. This should have been Maya's most difficult opponent, since reflexes were among the fastest in known space, and their natural flight ability gave them three-dimensional mobility that humans couldn't match. The match began with taking to the air immediately, using his hover capability to gain altitude advantage while firing down at Maya's position. It was a classic tactic: maintain distance, use superior speed and maneuverability, and wear down ground-based opponents from safety. Maya studied his flight pattern for exactly 30 seconds, then made her move. Instead of trying to match his aerial mobility, she began dismantling the arena itself. The energy barriers that contained the fighting space were supported by physical mounting points that could be damaged without affecting the safety systems. Maya used her energy rifle to target these mounting points in a specific sequence, causing sections of the barrier wall to shift and create new terrain features. Within minutes, she turned the open arena into a three-dimensional maze of tilted barriers and collapsed platforms that negated its flight advantage. When he tried to maneuver around the obstacles, Maya was waiting with a perfectly timed shot that caught him as he navigated a narrow gap between displaced barrier sections. "Winner, Cadet." But this time, didn't just announce the result. He activated his communicator and called for Commander Al to report to the training arena immediately. Maya stood in the center of the modified arena, surrounded by the debris of her tactical improvisation, and realized that her problems were just beginning. She'd won 3 matches decisively, but she'd also demonstrated capabilities that raised serious questions about what humans were really capable of and how much the Academy's instructors actually knew about her species. Commander Al arrived within minutes, accompanied by 2 senior Academy officials that Maya recognized but had never spoken to. They surveyed the modified arena and reviewed the match recordings in silence before focusing their attention on her. "Cadet," said the commander finally, "please explain how you acquired detailed knowledge of physiological vulnerabilities." Maya stood at attention. "I don't have detailed knowledge, sir. I made tactical assessments based on observable patterns." "And the arena modifications during your final match?" "I identified structural weaknesses and exploited them to create tactical advantage." Commander Al exchanged glances with the other officials. "Cadet, these capabilities suggest military training beyond what would be available to civilian populations. Are you representing your actual background accurately?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Maya realized that her performance had been so far outside expected parameters that the Academy leadership suspected she might be a Special Forces operative rather than a regular cadet. "Sir, my background information is accurate. I'm a civilian from the human colony systems." "Which specific colony?" Maya hesitated. She'd listed 442B in her application materials, but most Academy officials probably hadn't bothered to research the details of an obscure human settlement. "442B, sir." One of the other officials pulled up a galactic database on his tablet and began searching for information about Maya's. What he found made his expression change dramatically. "Commander," he said quietly, showing his tablet to Al, 442B is classified as a Class X, Gravity is 4 times galactic standard. Hostile radiation environment. Predatory megafauna with armor-piercing capabilities. It's listed as unsuitable for colonization by any known species. Commander Al stared at the information for a long moment, then looked back at Maya. You grew up on a Class X. Yes, sir. And you survived how long in that environment? 18 years, sir. 6 of those alone after the colony was evacuated. The silence that followed was profound. Class X were considered uninhabitable even with full technological support. The idea that a human teenager had survived alone on such a world for 6 years was almost incomprehensible. That explains the combat capabilities, said one of the officials, and the tactical improvisation skills. It also explains why she knows alien physiological weaknesses, added another. She's been hunting creatures similar to our species for survival. Commander Al nodded slowly. Cadet, you will report to my office at 800 tomorrow for extended debriefing. Until then, you're confined to quarters. Maya felt her heart sink. Confinement to quarters was usually the first step toward dismissal from the academy. As the officials left and the other cadets dispersed, Maya found herself alone in the modified arena. Her squad mates from Gamma 7 approached cautiously, clearly uncertain about what they'd just witnessed. Maya said carefully, "Exactly what kind of colony were you from?" The question was simple, but Maya knew that her answer would determine whether her squad mates continued to see her as a teammate or began to see her as something else entirely. "The kind where you learn to survive," she said finally, "or you don't." That night, alone in her quarters, Maya reviewed the academy regulations regarding species classification and cadet eligibility. She found what she was looking for in Section 12C. Cadets whose capabilities exceed established parameters for their species classification may be subject to reclassification review and potential program reassignment. She was being investigated not just as a suspicious individual, but as a representative of humanity whose abilities might require the Galactic Council to completely reassess what humans were capable of. The problem was that Maya herself wasn't entirely sure what humans were capable of. She'd grown up assuming that her survival skills were normal for her species, because everyone she'd known on 442B had possessed similar capabilities. It was only after arriving at the academy that she'd realized most humans from Earth lived in much safer environments and had never developed the extreme survival adaptations that characterized the colony worlds. Maya represented not just humanity, but a specific subset of humanity that had evolved in conditions so harsh that they'd developed capabilities beyond what even other humans possessed. The next morning would bring questions she wasn't sure she could answer, from officials who were beginning to suspect that humanity's introduction to galactic society might require significant revisions to their understanding of what species could become. But as Maya lay in her narrow academy bunk, listening to the station's life support systems humming through the walls, she wasn't thinking about tomorrow's interrogation. Commander Al's office occupied an entire section of the Academy's command deck, with massive windows that provided a panoramic view of the surrounding star system. Maya sat in a chair designed for beings much larger than humans, her feet barely touching the floor, while 3 senior Academy officials reviewed her complete personnel file. The questioning had been going on for 2 hours. "Let me understand this correctly," said Doctor, the Academy's chief, whose elongated skull housed a brain capable of processing information at superhuman speeds. "You claim to have survived alone on 442B from age 12 to 18, during which time you hunted indigenous predators for sustenance and shelter materials." "That's correct," Maya replied. The indigenous predators include armored ravagers with natural defensive plating, capable of deflecting military-grade weapons, shade stalkers with optical camouflage and paralytic venom, and pack hunters with coordinated group tactics and armor-piercing claws. Maya nodded, among others. Doctor consulted his data tablet. "According to our database, these creatures represent threat levels that would challenge fully equipped military squads. You're claiming a 12-year-old human child not only survived encounters with them, but actively hunted them for 6 years." "I had to eat," Maya said simply. The third official, Admiral Ra of the Defense Fleet, leaned forward in her chair. Her compound eyes reflected light in patterns that indicated deep concentration. "Cadet, we've reviewed the Academy's surveillance recordings of your training performance. Your combat techniques include moves that aren't taught in any known military doctrine. Your tactical improvisations suggest experience with real combat scenarios. Your knowledge of alien physiological vulnerabilities is beyond what any civilian should possess. Maya felt the weight of their suspicion. Admiral, with respect, you're looking at this backwards. I don't have special military training. I just learned to survive in an environment where everything was trying to kill me. That's exactly what concerns us, admitted Commander Al. The Galactic Council's species classification system assumes that member civilizations develop under relatively stable conditions. Humans were classified as a recently emerged spacefaring species with standard physiological parameters. But if humans regularly survive in Class X conditions. He didn't need to finish the thought. Maya understood the implications. If humans could routinely survive in environments that challenged other species' military forces, it meant the Council had fundamentally misunderstood what humanity was capable of. How many human colonies exist in similar environments? Asked Doctor. Maya thought about what she knew of human space. I'm not sure exactly. Earth Authority doesn't release detailed colony information to civilians, but most of the Outer Rim settlements are on worlds that other species wouldn't consider habitable. Define wouldn't consider habitable, pressed Admiral Ra. High gravity, extreme weather, dangerous wildlife, toxic atmospheres, radiation exposure. Maya paused. The colonies that get the most volunteers are usually the ones that sound the most challenging. The officials exchanged glances that Maya couldn't interpret. She was beginning to realize that her casual description of human colonial preferences was causing significant concern among the Academy leadership. Doctor pulled up a galactic map on the room's main display screen. Show us the approximate locations of human colonies you're aware of. Maya studied the map and began pointing to star systems. There's a mining operation here, on a world with methane storms and crystalline predators. Agricultural colonies here and here, on high-radiation worlds with hostile plant life. Military training bases here, here, and here, on worlds with extreme gravity and predatory ecosystems. As she continued marking locations, a pattern began to emerge. Human colonies were clustered in regions of space that other species had marked as uninhabitable or too dangerous for settlement. Cadet, said Commander Al slowly, you're describing a colonial expansion pattern that suggests humans actively seek out the most dangerous environments in known space. Maya shrugged. Dangerous is relative. Besides, those worlds don't have any competition for colonization rights. Because no one else is insane enough to try living there, Admiral Ra muttered. Doctor was running calculations on his tablet, cross-referencing human colonial locations with galactic threat assessments. Commander, if this information is accurate, it suggests that humans have been systematically colonizing worlds that would serve as natural military training environments. Whether intentionally or not, they're creating population centers of individuals with extreme survival capabilities. Maya felt a chill of realization. Her survival skills weren't unique among human colonists. They were probably normal, which meant there were thousands, maybe millions of humans scattered across the galaxy who possessed similar capabilities. I need to ask you a direct question, said Commander Al. Are you aware of any human military preparations or expansion plans that would explain this colonial pattern? No, sir, I think humans just like challenges. The commander studied her for a long moment. Cadet, I'm going to be frank with you. Your performance at this academy has been extraordinary, but it's also raised questions about whether humanity poses a potential security threat to other council species. Maya's heart sank. She'd come to the academy hoping to prove that humans belonged in galactic society, but her success was having the opposite effect. Sir, I understand your concerns, but I'm not a threat to anyone. I just want to serve in the Defense Force and help protect Council space. We believe your intentions are genuine, said Admiral Ra. The concern is whether your capabilities represent a broader pattern among your species that could destabilize galactic security. Doctor looked up from his calculations. Commander, I've been reviewing the physiological data from Cadet's medical examinations. Her bone density is 40% higher than galactic human averages. Her muscle fiber composition indicates strength levels typically seen in species from heavy gravity worlds. Her reflexes test in the 99th percentile for all known humanoid species. What does that mean in practical terms? Asked the commander. It means she's not representative of baseline humanity. She's representative of humanity that has adapted to extreme environmental pressures. Doctor paused. And if significant portions of human colonial populations have similar adaptations. Maya interrupted. Doctor, you're making this sound more sinister than it is. Humans adapt to local conditions. That's what we do. It's not a military conspiracy, it's just biology. Biology that produces individuals capable of defeating trained warriors in hand-to-hand combat, Admiral Ra pointed out. Forgive our concern, but from a military perspective, that represents a significant strategic factor. Commander Al activated his communication system. This conversation needs to be elevated to Council leadership. Admiral, please prepare a preliminary assessment of potential human military capabilities based on cadets' demonstrated performance. Doctor, I need a comprehensive analysis of human physiological adaptations. Maya realized that she'd inadvertently triggered a galactic security review of her entire species. Sir, with permission, I think you're overcomplicating this. How so? You're assuming that because I can fight effectively, all humans must be secret military threats. But you're not considering why I learned to fight in the first place. Maya leaned forward in her oversized chair. I didn't hunt armored ravagers because I wanted to become a warrior. I hunted them because I was hungry and they were made of meat. I didn't study alien physiological weaknesses to prepare for combat. I studied them because similar creatures were trying to eat me, and I needed to know how to stop them. The room fell quiet as the officials considered her words. Everything I know about combat came from trying to survive. If humans are more capable fighters than other species expected, it's because we've had to be. Our colonies are in dangerous places because those are the only places available to us. We adapt to extreme conditions because that's the only way we can live in them. Doctor was making notes rapidly. Interesting perspective. You're suggesting that human capabilities developed as survival adaptations rather than military preparations. Exactly. And here's the thing, most humans from the core worlds probably couldn't do what I do. They've never needed to learn these skills because they live in safe environments. Admiral Ross studied Maya with her compound eyes. But the humans who do live in dangerous environments develop the capabilities to survive in them, Maya finished, just like any other species would. Commander Al was quiet for several minutes, apparently weighing the implications of Maya's explanation. Finally, he spoke. Cadet, assuming your assessment is accurate, it still presents the Council with a significant strategic concern. Humans occupy colonial territories throughout the galaxy's most dangerous regions. These populations are developing enhanced capabilities as environmental adaptations. Whether or not this is intentional, it represents a distributed military asset that other species can't match. Maya hadn't considered the strategic implications from that perspective. Sir, are you saying that human colonies are seen as a threat because we're too good at surviving? I'm saying that a species capable of thriving in environments that other species find lethal has military implications, whether they intend them or not. The conversation was interrupted by an emergency communication from the Academy's main operations center. Commander Al accepted the transmission, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. Commander, said the duty officer, a nervous-looking Saurian, we're receiving priority communications from multiple Council member worlds. They're requesting immediate information about human military capabilities and colonial expansion patterns. Maya's stomach sank. Word of her performance had apparently reached beyond the Academy. What specifically are they asking about? Sir, there are reports of unusual human activity on the frontier. A human colony on Prime successfully defended against a raider attack using improvised weapons and tactics. A human survey team on 7 completed a geological survey in an active volcanic region that killed the previous 3 survey expeditions. And there are unconfirmed reports of human civilians successfully hunting creatures that local military forces couldn't handle. Commander Al looked at Maya with an expression that might have been resignation. It appears your performance here isn't an isolated incident. The implications were sinking in. Maya's exceptional capabilities weren't unique among humans. They were probably normal. And across the galaxy, humans in dangerous environments were demonstrating abilities that other species found alarming. Commander, said Admiral Ra, I recommend immediate implementation of Protocol 7. Maya didn't know what Protocol 7 was, but she could tell from the reactions around the room that it was serious. Admiral, that seems premature, argued Doctor. We don't have evidence of hostile intent. We have evidence of capabilities that exceed our strategic planning assumptions, the Admiral replied. Protocol 7 allows for enhanced monitoring and assessment while maintaining normal diplomatic relations. Commander Al considered for a moment. Agreed, but I want to modify the implementation. He turned to Maya. Cadet, I'm going to offer you a choice. You can return to your normal training schedule while we conduct our assessment, with the understanding that your performance will continue to be closely monitored. Or you can volunteer to participate in an expanded evaluation program that would help us better understand human capabilities. What would the expanded program involve? Additional testing, interviews, and possibly communication with other human colonies to gather comparative data. It would delay your graduation, but it might help address the concerns that have been raised about your species. Maya realized she was being asked to become a test subject to help the Galactic Council decide whether humanity posed a security threat. It wasn't exactly what she'd planned when she'd applied to the Academy. But she also realized that her answer might determine how the Council treated human colonies throughout the galaxy. Sir, if I participate in the expanded program, will it help ensure that other humans are treated fairly? That's the goal, Cadet. Maya made her decision. Then I volunteer. Commander Al nodded approvingly. Very well. Report to Doctor's laboratory at 800 tomorrow. We'll begin with comprehensive physiological and psychological assessments. As the meeting concluded and Maya prepared to leave, Admiral Ra called her back. Cadet, one final question. In your assessment, how many humans throughout the galaxy possess capabilities similar to yours? Maya thought about the question seriously. Admiral, I honestly don't know, but I suspect the answer would surprise everyone. As she walked back toward her quarters, Maya realized that her journey at the Academy had taken an unexpected turn. She'd come here to prove that humans could serve alongside other species in the Defense Force. Instead, she'd accidentally initiated a galactic review of human military potential. The next phase of her Academy experience would determine not just her own future, but possibly the future relationship between humanity and the rest of the Galactic Council. She was T-Doctor. His laboratory occupied 3 levels of the Academy's research section, with equipment designed to analyze the physiology and psychology of over 200 different species. Maya had been subjected to every test imaginable over the past 2 weeks, from bone density scans to neural response measurements, to psychological evaluations that probed her survival instincts and tactical thinking patterns. The results had apparently surprised everyone involved. Cadet, said Doctor as he reviewed the latest batch of test results, your physiological adaptations are more extensive than we initially realized. Your bone structure shows modifications consistent with prolonged high-gravity exposure. Your muscle fiber density exceeds baseline human parameters by an average of 67%. Most interestingly, your neural pathway development indicates enhanced reflexes, pattern recognition, and threat assessment capabilities. Maya sat on the examination table, still wearing the sensor arrays that had been monitoring her responses during the latest round of tests. Doctor, I keep telling everyone, these aren't military modifications. This is just what happens when humans grow up in dangerous places. That's precisely what concerns the Council, said Admiral Ra, who had been observing the testing sessions. If these adaptations develop naturally in response to environmental pressure, it means human colonial populations are essentially self-draining military assets. The door to the laboratory opened, and Commander Al entered accompanied by 2 individuals Maya hadn't seen before. A tall, elegant ethereal whose energy-based physiology allowed her to partially phase through solid matter, and a compact, heavily armored whose species was known for their defensive capabilities and strategic thinking. Cadet, said the commander, allow me to introduce Counselor of the Ethereal Assembly and General of the Defense League. They're here representing the Council's Strategic Assessment Committee. Maya stood and offered formal greetings, though she noticed that neither of the newcomers seemed entirely comfortable in her presence. Word of her capabilities had apparently preceded her. Counselor General, said Doctor, I've completed the comprehensive evaluation of Cadet's physiological and psychological profile. The results support her claims about natural adaptation to extreme environmental conditions. Counselor's energy form flickered in patterns that indicated deep thought. Doctor, please summarize your findings for the record. Doctor activated a holographic display that showed comparative analysis charts. Cadet represents what appears to be a subspecies of humanity adapted for survival in Class X conditions. Her physical capabilities exceed standard human parameters by significant margins, but the adaptations appear to be natural evolutionary responses rather than artificial enhancements. More specifically, said General in his gravelly voice, what level of threat assessment should we assign to individuals with similar capabilities? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Maya realized that despite all the testing and evaluation, the underlying concern remained whether humans like her represented a military threat to other species. General, Doctor replied carefully, Cadet's capabilities would allow her to function effectively as a special forces operative against most known species. However, her psychological profile indicates no aggressive tendencies beyond normal defensive responses. That's not particularly reassuring, admitted Admiral Ra. A single individual with special forces capabilities operating alone is concerning. A distributed population of such individuals throughout the galaxy is terrifying, Maya suggested bluntly. The room fell silent. Maya realized she'd probably just made another political mistake, but she was getting tired of being discussed as if she were a weapon rather than a person. Counselor General, with respect, I think you're approaching this problem from the wrong direction, Maya continued. You're so focused on whether humans like me could pose a threat that you're not asking whether we would want to. Counselor's energy patterns shifted to indicate curiosity. Please explain. Everything I've learned about combat and survival, I learned because I had to. I didn't hunt armored ravagers because I wanted to be a warrior. I hunted them because they were hunting me and I needed to eat. I didn't develop enhanced reflexes because I wanted to be dangerous. I developed them because slow humans die on. Maya gestured toward the test results displayed on the holographic screen. You're looking at all these capabilities and seeing military potential, but from my perspective, they represent 6 years of being terrified, hungry, and alone. Every skill I have came from desperation, not aggression. General's armor plating shifted slightly, indicating skepticism. Cadet, regardless of your motivations for acquiring these skills, you possess them. The potential for their misuse remains a valid concern. Does it? Maya challenged. General, what exactly are you afraid humans like me might do? The question seemed to catch him off guard. Hostile actions against Council member species, military aggression, destabilization of established security arrangements. Maya nodded, and why would we want to do any of that? Territorial expansion, resource acquisition, political dominance. General, with respect, you don't understand human psychology. Maya stood up. Humans don't colonize because we want to conquer the galaxy. We colonize them because we like the challenge. We survive in impossible conditions because it makes us feel accomplished. We develop these capabilities because we enjoy proving that nothing can kill us. The officials exchanged glances. Maya realized her explanation probably wasn't as reassuring as she'd intended. Let me put it another way, she continued. The humans who choose to live on worlds like 442b aren't motivated by conquest. They're motivated by adventure. We're not trying to build military assets. We're trying to see if we can survive in places where nothing else can live. Doctor was taking notes rapidly. Fascinating. You're suggesting that human colonization is driven by recreational rather than strategic motivations. Exactly. The colonies that get the most volunteers are the ones that sound the most dangerous. Humans hear about a world with poisonous atmosphere, predatory wildlife, and extreme gravity, and our first thought isn't that sounds like a threat. It's that sounds like fun. Counselor's energy form pulsed in what might have been amusement. Cadet, are you telling us that humans voluntarily seek out lethal environments for entertainment purposes? Pretty much. The silence that followed was profound. That's, General began, then stopped. That's completely insane. From your perspective, probably, Maya agreed. But it explains why human capabilities seem so threatening to other species. You're used to thinking of dangerous environments as obstacles to avoid. Humans think of them as challenges to overcome. Admiral Ra was studying the test results with renewed interest. If this assessment is accurate, it has significant implications for human integration into Council society, a species that seeks out dangerous challenges rather than avoiding them. Would make excellent military allies, Commander Al finished, but potentially unreliable as predictable partners. The conversation was interrupted by an emergency communication from the Academy's Operations Center. Commander Al accepted the transmission, and the duty officer's image appeared in the room. Commander, urgent priority message from the Council chambers on Nexus Prime. There's been an incident involving human colonists in the Outer Rim territories. Maya felt her stomach drop. What kind of incident? The duty officer consulted his data display. A human colony ship encountered a Ravager fleet attack in the Terminus system. Initial reports indicate the colonists successfully repelled the attack using improvised weapons and tactics. Maya blinked. They fought off Ravagers, space pirates. Apparently so. The Ravager fleet commander transmitted a distress signal claiming his ships were being attacked by impossible human monsters, who were somehow boarding his vessels and disabling them from the inside. The laboratory fell completely silent. General was the first to speak. How many human colonists were involved in this engagement? Approximately 2,000 civilians, including families with children. Doctor pulled up a star chart showing the Terminus system. The Ravager fleets in that region operate with military-grade vessels and trained combat personnel for civilian colonists to successfully repel such an attack. Is impossible under normal circumstances, finished Admiral Ra, unless those colonists possessed capabilities similar to what we've observed in Cadet. Maya was struggling to process the implications. Are you saying there are 2,000 people like me on that colony ship? We're saying there might be 2,000 people with capabilities that we didn't know existed, said Counselor. The duty officer continued his report. Council Intelligence is requesting immediate analysis of human colonial military potential. Several member worlds are expressing concerns about human expansion into their territorial regions. Commander Al dismissed the communication and turned back to the assembled officials. Counselor, it appears our assessment of human capabilities may have been conservative. Commander, said Maya quietly, I need to make something clear. The humans on that colony ship probably didn't fight the Ravagers because they wanted to be heroes. They fought because Ravagers were threatening their families. Explain. Humans are defensive fighters, not aggressive ones. We develop extreme capabilities because we need to protect the people we care about. If those colonists defeated a Ravager fleet, it's because the pirates made the mistake of threatening human children. General's armor plating shifted in patterns that indicated alarm. Are you suggesting that human combat capabilities increase when they perceive threats to their family groups? Maya nodded. Humans in protective mode are much more dangerous than humans in normal circumstances. It's probably why your psychological evaluations of me seemed inconsistent. I'm not naturally aggressive, but I become extremely focused when people I care about are in danger. Doctor was running calculations on his tablet. This suggests that human military responses scale with perceived threat levels. Low-level threats produce measured responses, but threats to family or community structures produce overwhelming retaliation, Admiral Ra concluded grimly. Counselor's energy form flickered rapidly, indicating urgent thought processing. This information needs to be transmitted to the Council immediately. We may need to completely revise our assessment of human integration protocols. What does that mean for humans already in Council space? Maya asked. It means, said Commander Al, that the Council needs to decide whether humanity represents an opportunity or a threat to galactic stability. Maya realized that her time at the Academy had inadvertently triggered a galaxy-wide evaluation of her species' place in interstellar society. The outcome of that evaluation would determine whether humans were welcomed as equals, monitored as potential threats, or excluded from Council space entirely. Commander, she said carefully, what can I do to help ensure the right decision is made? Continue to be yourself, Cadet. Your honest responses and demonstrated character may be humanity's best argument for integration. As the officials prepared to leave for emergency meetings with council leadership, Maya remained in the laboratory with Doctor, staring at the test results that had started this entire crisis. "Doctor," she said finally, "do you think humans are too dangerous for galactic society?" Doctor considered the question carefully. "Cadet, I think humans are exactly as dangerous as they need to be to survive. The question is whether the rest of the galaxy can accept living alongside a species that refuses to be limited by what others consider impossible." Maya looked out through the laboratory's windows at the star field beyond the Academy station. Somewhere out there, 2,000 human colonists had just demonstrated that her capabilities weren't unique among her species. The galaxy was about to learn what humans were real. The council chambers on Nexus Prime had been in emergency session for 3 days. Maya watched the proceedings from a small observation gallery, accompanied by Dr. and Commander Al, as representatives from over 100 species debated humanity's future in galactic society. The debate had not been going well for humans. "The evidence is overwhelming," declared Senator, a massive saurian whose scales had shifted to aggressive red patterns. "Humans possess military capabilities that were not disclosed during their initial contact protocols. They have established colonies throughout the galaxy's most dangerous regions, creating a distributed network of enhanced combat populations. And recent incidents demonstrate that these capabilities extend to their civilian populations." Several other council members expressed agreement, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of clicks, hisses, chimes, and electronic pulses that the universal translators rendered as overlapping voices of concern. Maya felt sick. The very capabilities that had allowed her species to survive in hostile environments were being presented as evidence that humans were too dangerous to be trusted. "Furthermore," continued Senator, "human psychological profiles indicate aggressive tendencies disguised as defensive responses. The incident at Terminus System shows that human civilians will resort to extreme violence when challenged, regardless of proportional response protocols." That accusation made Maya angry. The Terminus System colonists had been attacked by pirates who had intended to kill or enslave everyone on the colony ships. Defending themselves wasn't aggressive, it was survival. Counselor rose to address the assembly, her energy form brightening to indicate formal speech mode. "Senators, while the concerns about human capabilities are understandable, we must consider the context of their development. Our investigation suggests that these abilities evolved as environmental adaptations rather than military preparations." "Context is irrelevant," snapped General, a military leader whose armor bore the scars of a dozen campaigns. "A weapon is a weapon regardless of how it was forged. Humans have demonstrated the ability to threaten established galactic order, whether intentionally or not." Maya watched from the observation gallery as one speaker after another presented arguments for restricting human expansion, monitoring human colonies, or even expelling humanity from Council space entirely. Each speaker seemed more convinced than the last that humans represented an existential threat to galactic peace. Then Ambassador Sarah stepped forward to address the assembly. Maya sat up. She shared a surname with the ambassador, but they weren't related. Ambassador was from Earth, a career diplomat who had never experienced life on a colony. Maya wondered how someone from comfortable Earth civilization could possibly defend the capabilities that humans had developed. "Honored counselors," Ambassador began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics, "I understand the concerns that have been raised about human military capabilities, but I believe this council is making a fundamental error in its assessment of my species." The chamber fell quiet, allowing the ambassador to continue. "You're evaluating humans as if we were a traditional military threat, organized, centralized, and aggressive. But that assessment misses the essential nature of human psychology and motivation." Ambassador activated a holographic display that showed a map of human colonial expansion throughout the galaxy. "Yes, humans have settled on dangerous worlds that other species avoid. Yes, our colonists have developed remarkable survival capabilities, but look at the pattern of our expansion." The display highlighted human colony locations in relation to established council territories. "Human settlements don't threaten existing populations or compete for valuable resources. We've consistently chosen the worlds that nobody else wanted, the most hostile, dangerous, and challenging environments in known space. Maya realized where the ambassador was going with her argument. Humans don't expand to conquer, Ambassador continued. We expand to explore. We don't seek dangerous worlds to build military assets. We seek them because we find satisfaction in proving that we can survive anywhere. Senator interrupted with a harsh hiss. Ambassador, you're asking us to believe that humans voluntarily seek out lethal environments for recreational purposes. That explanation is completely accurate, said a new voice from the chamber's main entrance. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. Maya's heart nearly stopped. Captain Torres walked into the council chambers with the confident stride of someone who had spent years surviving in impossible conditions. His weathered face bore the scars of combat against creatures that most species couldn't even imagine, and his eyes held the calm alertness of someone who had learned to assess threats instantly and accurately. Behind him walked a dozen other humans, all bearing similar signs of experience. Maya recognized the type immediately colony veterans, people who had chosen to live in the galaxy's most hostile environments and had thrived there. Captain Torres, said Counselor with surprise, we weren't expecting additional human representatives. Captain Torres smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both friendly and slightly predatory. Counselor, when we heard that the Council was concerned about human military capabilities, we thought you might want to meet some actual examples of colonists. The tension in the chamber increased noticeably. Several alien representatives shifted nervously as they realized they were now in the same room with multiple examples of the humans they'd been discussing as potential threats. Captain, said General carefully, are you here to defend or demonstrate human capabilities? Neither, replied Torres. I'm here to explain them. He gestured to his companions. Sarah survived 8 years on Gehenna Prime, where the local atmosphere is sulfuric acid and the wildlife includes creatures that hunt in pack formations. David lived for a decade on Titan's Edge, where the gravity is 5 times galactic standard and the weather patterns include acid rain that can dissolve most known metals. As he introduced each colonist, Maya realized that her own survival experiences on 442b were not unique among humans. Every person Captain Torres had brought represented similar stories of choosing to live in impossible conditions and developing the capabilities necessary to thrive there. The point, said Captain Torres, is that none of us developed our capabilities because we wanted to threaten other species. We developed them because we wanted to see if we could survive in places where survival should be impossible. Doctor, one of the colonists, stepped forward. Counselors, I'm a who spent 12 years studying predator ecosystems on Class X worlds. I fought creatures that would terrify most military forces, not because I wanted to be a warrior, but because understanding predator behavior required getting close enough to observe their hunting patterns. Maya watched the council members as they processed this information. The humans standing before them weren't soldiers or threats. They were scientists, engineers, farmers, and explorers who had chosen to live in extreme conditions because they found such challenges personally fulfilling. Senator was clearly struggling to maintain his aggressive stance. Captain Torres, regardless of your motivations, you and your colleagues possess capabilities that could destabilize galactic security arrangements. Could maybe, Torres agreed, but why would we want to? The simple question seemed to catch the senator off guard. Think about it, Torres continued. We voluntarily live on worlds that most species consider uninhabitable. We've proven we can survive in conditions that would kill almost any other form of life. What could any of your civilizations possibly offer us that would be worth the effort of conquering? Doctor nodded agreement. We don't need your resources. We've learned to thrive in environments where no resources exist. We don't need your technology. We've developed the skills to survive with minimal equipment. We don't need your territories. We prefer the places you've already decided are too dangerous to claim. Ambassador smiled as she realized what her fellow humans were demonstrating. Counselors, you've been approaching this situation as if humans were a traditional expansionist species seeking to compete with existing galactic powers. But humans who choose colonies aren't motivated by competition. They're motivated by adventure. Maya finally understood the argument that was being made. Humans weren't threats to galactic order because they didn't want what other species had. They wanted what other species had rejected as too dangerous or impossible. Captain Torres addressed the assembly directly. "Honored counselors, I'm going to make you an offer that should resolve your concerns about human military capabilities." The chamber fell silent. "Send us your most dangerous problems. When you encounter hostile environments that your military forces can't handle, when you discover threats that your technology can't solve, when you face challenges that exceed the capabilities of traditional approaches, send humans." He gestured to his companions. "We'll volunteer to tackle the missions that other species consider impossible. We'll establish colonies in regions too dangerous for normal settlement. We'll serve as advanced scouts for exploration into hostile territories." Maya realized what he was proposing, turning humanity's apparent military capabilities into a galactic public service. "In exchange," Torres continued, "we ask only for the opportunity to prove that humans can be valuable allies rather than dangerous threats. Judge us by our actions, not by our potential for misuse of our capabilities." Counselor's energy form flickered in patterns that indicated deep consideration. "Captain Torres, you're proposing that humans serve as a specialized force for handling extreme challenges that other species cannot address." "Exactly. Use our capabilities for the benefit of galactic society rather than seeing them as a threat to it." General was quiet for several minutes, apparently processing the implications of the proposal. Finally, he spoke. "Captain, this would require humans to accept significant risk in service to species that have questioned your right to participate in galactic society." Torres shrugged. "General, we accept significant risk every day by choosing to live on. At least this way, the risk would serve a constructive purpose." Maya watched from the observation gallery as the mood in the chamber began to shift. The council members were starting to see humans not as threats to be contained, but as resources to be utilized. The debate continued for several more hours, but the outcome was becoming clear. Humanity would be granted full membership in galactic society, with the understanding that human capabilities would be available to address challenges beyond the scope of traditional diplomatic or military solutions. As the formal voting began, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She'd come to the academy hoping to prove that one human could serve effectively alongside other species. Instead, she'd accidentally demonstrated that humanity as a whole possessed capabilities that could serve the entire galaxy. 3 months later, Maya graduated from the Galactic Academy with honors, the first human to complete the full program. But more importantly, she graduated as part of Squad Gamma 7, still serving alongside the alien teammates who had learned to see her as a valued colleague rather than a mysterious threat. The Academy's graduation ceremony included representatives from dozens of species, including Captain Torres and the other colonists who had spoken before the Council. As Maya received her commission in the Galactic Defense Force, she realized that her story was just beginning. Humans had found their place in galactic society not by hiding their capabilities or apologizing for their origins, but by demonstrating that strength developed through survival could be channeled toward protection and service. Maya, the girl who had been dismissed as weak and primitive by her fellow cadets, had helped her entire species find acceptance among the stars by proving that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their ability to survive in impossible conditions. It was their willingness to use that strength to help others do the same. The galaxy was a dangerous place, filled with threats and challenges that exceeded the capabilities of most civilized species. But now it had humans to help face those challenges, and Maya had learned that sometimes the best way to prove you belong is to show others what you're willing to sacrifice to earn your place among them. Capable of when properly motivated. Maya could only hope that the lesson wouldn't end with humanity being expelled from civilized space about her squad mates, and whether they would still accept her as part of their team once they learned the full truth about what she'd had to do to survive. The Academy's social dynamics were about to become much more complicated, and Maya was beginning to understand that sometimes proving yourself could be just as dangerous as failing to measure up. Respect were earned through careful demonstration of capability. Dramatically exceeding expectations could be seen as showing off or making others look bad. Maya had survived 6 years alone on one of the galaxy's most dangerous worlds. She was about to discover that navigating academy politics might be even more challenging than hunting predatory aliens in radioactive storms.